Good evening, everyone. I'm Councillor Sandra Natchball, Chairman of Housing, Health and Environment Policy Advisory Committee, and I'm pleased to welcome you to this meeting of the committee. The meeting will be broadcast live and recorded for playback on the Council's YouTube channel. Will anyone else be recording the proceedings? I ask so that people at the meeting will know if this is happening. If the fire alarm sounds during the meeting, please remain seated and members of the Democratic Services team will assess the situation and give further instructions on the evacuation of the building if necessary. Item 1, apologies. Apologies have been received from Councillors Mortimer and Rose. Are there any other apologies? No, thank you. Can any substitutes present state their attendance, please? Thank you.
Councillor English for Councillor Mortimer.
Councillor Wilkinson for Councillor Rose.
Thank you. I intend to take the minutes of the meeting held on 16th of January 2024 as an urgent item. They were published on Friday 26th of January and paper copies have been circulated to the committee today. A couple of printing mistakes have occurred regarding item 11, 1,000 Homes Programme, individual scheme updates. The report was printed on yellow paper, but only the exempt appendix should have been printed on yellow paper. The report has been reprinted and has been circulated to the committee today. The exempt appendix was also printed in portrait instead of landscape, and a landscape version is available to the committee today. Does anyone need a moment to read them before we begin? No? Okay, thank you. Item 4, notification of visiting members. Are there any visiting members? And if so, please state which item you'd like to speak on.
Councillor Cleater for item E11, affordable housing, please.
Thank you. Thank you. Are there any disclosures by members or officers? Thank you. Are there any disclosures of lobbying? Thank you. Item 7 is to consider whether any item should be taken in private because of the possible disclosure of exempt information. I move that all items be taken in public unless any member of the committee wishes to refer specifically to the information contained within the exempt appendix to item 11, which is the 1,000 homes programme, individual scheme updates, in which case the committee will need to enter into closed session due to the likely disclosure of exempt information. Is it agreed that it's all taken in public? Thank you. Item 8, minutes of the meeting held on 16th of January. Do any members have any comments on the accuracy of the minutes? None, thank you. I move that the minutes of the meeting held on 16th of January be approved as a correct record and signed. Is that agreed? Thank you. Item 9, forward plan relating to the committee's terms of reference, which can be found on pages 5 to 9. Are there any comments on the forward plan, or does the Cabinet member wish to make any comments? No? Thank you. I move that the forward plan be noted. Is that agreed? Thank you. Item 10, Biodiversity and Climate Change Action Plan Update. Councillor Garton, would you like to introduce this? Thank you.
If I may, Madam Chairman, good evening, members. The Policy and Resources Committee adopted the Biodiversity Climate Change Action Plan in October 2020 with the latest update reported in July 23. The report details ongoing initiatives related to MBC property decarbonisation, fleet decarbonisation and monitoring the Council's carbon footprint. Since the last update taken on feedback from members, collaborative efforts have between officers and the Cabinet have redefined the Council's priorities to address the most significant sources of carbon emissions in Maidstone Borough. This report also includes updates on the net zero housing and transportation net zero. The report also highlights processes implementing the action plan, including the success of the EcoHub, the status of planned solar projects, tree planting efforts, and the details of the Rural England Prosperity Fund, with full details of each action in Appendix 1. The main actions which refer to this particular committee are Action 2.1, 2.2, 4.1, 4.2, and 5.2, as well as 6.4 and 7.4. As a member for Environmental Services, I'd like to give a quick update on my own resort, particularly with the view to the fleet. Substantial improvements have been carried out at the depot to increase the electricity capacity by 277 kilovolt amps. This was completed by connecting to a nearby substation with minimal groundworks. This has enabled us to increase our charging infrastructure quite substantially. There are now 31 plug-in chargers installed at the depot to support the growth of the electric fleet. 2 EV plug-in charging points are also being installed at the crematorium. The fleet of vehicles now includes 11 electric vehicles, with 2 more on order for delivery this year. Most recent additions to the electric fleet were the jet washing and play area maintenance vehicles. Telematics is now being used across the council's fleet to help improve driving behaviour through targeted training and to help improve the efficiency of the services. Depot and crematorium lighting has now been replaced with LED lights throughout. Coming to town centre recycling strategies, from the beginning of February, our staff will be separating all recycling from the litter they collect. Paper, card, glass bottles, plastic bottles and cans will be collected in clear recycling sacks and sent for recycling alongside the household recycling collections. This will then be expanded to the volunteer litter picking groups in the spring. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Councillor Jeffrey.
Thank you. It's a really interesting report, and it's good to see a lot of these actions being green, and particularly interesting to see some of the stats in here. The fact that 52% of our borough emissions are from transport is quite a stark figure, and 51% of Scope 1 for the council comes from the leisure centre. It does really help focus the minds on what we need to go at and where we need to go hard at. And it's good to see that the phrase sustainable is put in front of integrated transport. Hurrah! And I'm pleased to see the LC WIP, the local cycling and walking plan, that we don't have referenced in there. That's good. There is a question, and because I don't think I couldn't quite hear what you said around office recycling. Did you say that there is a plan for that? Because it's still read in here. Before you come back to that, the other small point is the bit that is still missing from the plan is one of adaptation. And we really do need to start our thinking around urban trees, riparian woodland and so forth, because that is going to be increasingly necessary over the coming few years.
Well, as far as office recycling is concerned, I think that is an issue for property services, which I happily take forward to them. It's not my particular department. That's why I didn't mention it. Trees, obviously, we are working very hard to include tree improvements, tree lining improvements, particularly in the town centre. We have a few plans in the emerging town centre strategy. So it's not only a matter of helping the environment, but also greening up the town centre and make it more amenable to the public visiting the town centre.
Thank you. Councillor English, then Councillor Wilkinson. Thank you.
Wearing another hat, I sit on Bearsted Parish Council, as does Councillor Springett, and we looking at the Rural Prosperity Fund some time ago. And unfortunately, Bearsted doesn't qualify as rural, and that's the case with quite a few other parishes in Maidstone. So we have a situation where the parish council was quite keen to look at some of these energy efficiency and some of the biodiversity grants, but we're not able to do so because we don't qualify for any of the grants. So I wondered whether, as a medium-term piece of work, Borough Council and parishes that do not qualify for some of these funds should actually be talking about other ways to approach this particular issue, because there is some desire out there in those parishes, and there are a lot of them that do not actually form part of the rural areas. So that's an issue that I think we do actually need to look into. More generally, I do welcome this report. In many ways, it's a positive step forward. Obviously, there's a huge amount to do in these areas, and some of these things are work in progress, and the technology is only just developing around differential parking charges and so on. We've only just got to the stage where we could do it if we wanted to. So there's obviously going to be a lot more work to be done, but I think it is a significant step forward from where we were this time last year. So well done on that to everyone, members and officers across the piece. I'd just like to say that I would hope that we would seriously address some of these sustainable transport issues going forward, because I have had the feeling that there has been understandably a concentration on the big road improvement and junction improvement projects, but if you look at it from areas like, take Detlin for example, if you've ever tried to walk out of Detlin on what KCC call the safe routes out of the village for children, there's very little safe about those routes, leaving aside climate change and biodiversity. So, but for a relatively small amount of money, a cycle route and footpath, which could actually take a significant amount of traffic, could easily be developed. So I think we should, for a relatively small amount of money in some of our rural locations and suburban locations, we can probably achieve a disproportionate result.
Sorry, I'll allow Councillor Garson first to reply. Thank you.
Yeah, Councillor English, thank you for your kind words about this report. As far as grants is concerned, I mean, the key word is in the word grant. It's coming from central government, and I just wish we could give as much grants as possible. I think it's a matter also for particularly your parish council to lobby your MP to make grants available and widen the criteria. If grant money becomes available to the council, obviously we hand it out to whoever is eligible to it. As far as road infrastructure improvements are concerned, you know that Maidstone Borough Council is not the Highways Authority, so again it's something we would really have to discuss with KCC. I'm always happy to take plans on board and lobby officers at KCC accordingly, and also your member. And finally, I think a lot of Maidstone's infrastructure problems and pollution as a result is obviously the lack of relief road in the Leeds-Langley corridor, to which we are obviously in support.
It is our sort of local plan and our integrated transport strategy, cycle and walking strategy. I agree that to a large extent it's dependent on KCC, but we are the ones formulating the initial strategy, so it's not just their responsibility.
Indeed, I didn't want to abdicate all responsibility there, and the councillor and his party, as well as every party in this room and on this council, worked very hard to address the local plan, and we will be, as soon as the current review has been ratified, we'll be starting the next review.
Sorry, yes, okay, Councillor Parfitt-Reid before Councillor Wilkinson. Okay.
Thank you, Madam
Okay.
Chairman. I just sort of wanted to add to that. I mean, we can sort of pass the buck to KCC, but I was actually sat in a briefing today from KCC about transport plans and local plans and pulling them together. And KCC, to an extent, their hands are tied. For example, the land in Offham, that site that we, KCC Highways, put an objection to on the basis of the traffic, KCC actually lost that case, and it cost tens of thousands of pounds. So to an extent, their hands are tied as well. I think this is, it is bigger than just us as a council and KCC, and I think this is where we really need to be lobbying government and getting support from there as well.
Thank you. Before Councillor Wilkinson, welcome Councillor Hastie. I just want to check, are there any disclosures or lobbying?
No, I have none.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Councillor Wilkinson, thank you.
I just wanted to say that I'm looking forward to the Sustainable Integrated Transport Workshop, because I'm really passionate about public transport as a non-driver, and I currently feel like the current transport system isn't fit for purpose. You have to, when I go to Shepway, it takes me over an hour to get from one side of Maidstone to the other, and 2 buses. And I think to encourage people to get out their cars, you need to incentivise it to make it a quicker journey, maybe something like a circular bus or something like that. If you're building all these houses, you're going to need a better transport system, otherwise it's going to end up in gridlock. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you. Councillor Springett.
Thank you. Councillor English partly stole my thunder, because I've got a big note here that said Bearster's not rural, so we can't get any of the Rural England Prosperity Fund, but we're right on the edge of it. We've got hardly any land to plant any trees on. We don't have a bus apart from the community bus that the parish council sponsor, which is a twice a day into Maidstone and out again. The train is only once an hour, so just to try and even do that, if I try to do that to get here for this meeting, it's just ridiculous. So just that point. And I don't think we've got a single EV charging point in the village that I can think of, that I can actually think of anywhere.
There is one in the car park which is not being used by Bearsted Woodland Trust.
Yeah, but that's not accessible at the moment. But actually in the village, we don't actually have one, and we have an awful lot of EVs. So I'd just like to flag that up. Thank you. And there was one other point which is slightly minor, which is on page 13, which is 2.4, part 5, right at the bottom. It just says, create a planning policy framework for solar farms in the local plan, creating zoning for renewable energy generation for longer term policy, and allocated land as part of the local plan review process. Is that going to be in conjunction with the electricity companies? Because they seem to be the ones that know where there is capacity to take electricity into the grid. We don't know that, so we could say it's a great field over there, and then they could say, but we've got a load of solar, we can't take any more into the grid in this area. I just wondered if there is that done in conjunction with the electricity companies. Thank you.
So I'll try to answer that. So it's initial zoning to find the best locations for where potential solar farms or solar can be connected. So I'm sure planners must take into consideration where it can connect into the grid. So yeah.
I think it's a plan in the making as well, similar to the local plan, where we have a call for sites, etc., the same sort of procedures. And I think important to see there is also whether the land is suitable for solar panels, for example. If we take, for example, the soil in the Kingswood area, it's not very good farming quality soil, so it would be far more suitable for a solar farm and enhancing the biodiversity which comes naturally with solar farms, rather than using good agricultural land in other parts of the borough.
Councillor Hasty first, then I'll come to you. Thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to support what Councillor Wilkinson was saying, especially, you know, I know it takes an absolutely age to get anywhere across Maidstone, and also the lighting, because it's not particularly safe to walk through all parts of Maidstone either if you have to get to a connecting bus and things, and that's quite important too, I think.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to return on the parish councillors and the rural fund. We've just received all the applications for the second phase, and DEFRA does have a map and a cut-off, and so it's been a difficult process, and there are parishes just on that border, but we're abiding by the DEFRA rules to that. But just to say also that we have our Gemma Bailey with me at the end of the table on the right, working with our parish councils and is forming good relationships. And we're offering carbon literacy training and talking about developing action plans with them. And so so access to grants and looking for more opportunities will become more obvious to the parish councils going forward.
Thank you. Councillor Joy.
Just to say, I was encouraged by the report. I think I remember being at the council meeting where it should come up, and it does. And we were saying at that meeting, or others were, that there's things that we could be doing that we're not letting the public know we're doing. And I just read this and thought, yes, we're starting to get somewhere. We've got to start. I understand that, and I don't mean we should be complacent, but I myself was encouraged with it. So thank you.
Forgot to say, I was very pleased with the report in general. I've gone through it, and if you look, I've got a lot of ticks, because I think it was, in general, I thought it was actually a good news story. I thought it was good. So thank you very much. And if it helps, I'm happy to propose as per the papers. Thank you.
Thank you. Could I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Joy. Is that all agreed? Thank you. Moving on to item 11, the 1,000 Homes Programme, individual scheme updates. That can be found on pages 24 to 112. Councillor Parfitt-Reid.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This report proposes changes to the 5 previously approved council housing development projects as follows. The Royal British Legion at Parkwood, which is 7 homes, the Bath Store, which is 19 homes, Corbin Yard, 24 homes, Britannia House, 28, and Land at Granville Road, 12 homes. For the Royal British Legion site, the proposal is to simply switch 7 market rent homes to social rent. Construction for this scheme is already underway. For the other 4 sites, the proposal is to deliver all the homes to social rent rather than affordable rent. For the Bath Store, Britannia House and Land at Granville Road, approval is also required to enter into the construction contracts at a higher cost than previously reported. As per the report, officers have an attractive indicative offer of social housing grant funding from Homes England to deliver all 90 homes for social rent. This is circa 50% of market rent. Alternatively, the homes could be delivered as affordable rent, which is circa 80% of the market rent capped at the local housing allowance. Under this scenario, the grant received would be less, but the rental income higher. The preferred option is to deliver the homes for social rent because the higher grant will mean less borrowing for the council. The rental income stream to the council will be more secure and the tenants will benefit from lower rents. And I think it's also important to note that there is also a cost avoidance to this. There are people in temporary accommodation that would not be able to afford affordable rent, and we have approximately 86 families in temporary accommodation who would not fit into the affordable rent scenario. So it is really important as a council that we do have, if you like, a breadth of tenures. So we have the social rent, which is obviously 50%. We will be delivering affordable rent, and we do have some in the private rental sector as well. But the housing team do feel it's very important that we deliver some of these properties at social rents. Under the social rent scenario, on an aggregate basis, the schemes will still meet the council's required investment returns in terms of net present value and internal rate of return. The Cabinet has already made the decision to enter into the umbrella grant funding agreement with Homes England, so these 5 schemes will be the first to fall within that contract. Thank you, and any questions?
Thank you. Councillor English. Oh, sorry. Councillor Cleater, would you like to speak on this?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm very heartened to hear that we're going for social rents, and I think clearly the cost avoidance, as you were outlining, Councillor Parfitt-Reid, is very important. We have those people in temporary accommodation, we have people in overcrowded accommodation who are currently, there is a logjam, and the one thing about affordable rent is it's unaffordable for the average person with an average job. So I actually think that it is absolutely critical that wherever we can, we are building on social rents, because otherwise we are just perpetuating a problem. I don't know about anybody else's inbox, but mine at the moment is filled with people either overcrowded in homes, unaffordable homes in the private sector, and Councillor English has raised this before about some of the awful private rented sector landlords that we have. To be fair, a lot of it perpetuated by other local authorities placing in our area. But clearly, if we are to move forward into the future, we need to have proper social housing at social housing rents for people who live and work and bring to Maidstone economic viability, because we can have all the strategies we want, but if people can't afford to live in Maidstone, then we're really hamstrung. And to link in exactly to what Councillor Wilkinson and Councillor Hastie have been saying, whenever we develop and look at building housing, we need to get the integrated transport right, no matter whether it's private, whether it's affordable, whether it's social, because people A, need to be able to afford to go to work, and B, need to have a bus to get there, because in other areas, if this all doesn't come together, then we're going to get nowhere in any of the plans that we have to bring Maidstone back up to a great place to live. And I don't think it's anything controversial, because I think we've got cross-party agreement on this, and this is what we want. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cleater. Councillor English, then Councillor Springett. Thank you.
Yes, I mean, it comes as no surprise to anyone who's been watching the borough over the last few years that we have a bit of a housing problem. Not so much the provision of overall numbers of houses, perhaps, although that can be an issue, but the type of houses. There's a real affordability crisis. And whilst in some parts of the country affordable rent may be affordable, in London and the South East it clearly isn't. So it's a no-brainer from the point of view of trying to help the people who need the help, that we go for social rent, delivered either for our own offices or through other providers. It's the only way, as my friend Ashley keeps telling me, the only way to actually make an impact on the problem. And from the council's point of view, in terms of being careful with the council's money, it also makes sense. So it's a win-win situation from that point of view. There's absolutely no argument that the two policy changes that are recommended are the right ones. Now, as has been pointed out, there are a few issues with one or two of those sites which are not anything to do with the recommendations on the paper tonight. They're mostly about how one delivers the development. And those relate to, and the solution to those, if there is a solution, does relate to what Councillor Cleater has just said. Those of us who know Granville Road, for example, will know that that area and Grecian Street and those roads around there are some of the most congested in terms of residents' lack of parking ability that you can get. So leaving aside whether people can afford a car, if you have a car, there's a really, really big issue as to where you're going to park it. And it could be miles away. So anything we can do to actually make a more sustainable solution, whether it's improving footpaths and cycleways or the bus service, is important, because otherwise we will be creating a bit of a problem for anyone who wants to live in these hopefully otherwise very nice developments. So we do need to make sure that our policies are joined up across the piece. That's all I'm saying. But otherwise, in terms of the recommendations themselves, I'm fully in support.
Thank you, Councillor.
I'm happy to move the recommendation, although I don't want to curdle the debate.
Thank you, Councillor Springett.
Can I just ask the officer, the social rents are based on a formula linked to local property price in 1999, and it says in option B, returns are maintained. We get a bigger grant, but long term the rents are lower, so there's liable to be an increased cost to the council as maintenance goes up. Whereas, if I'm reading it right, in the affordable rents, the local housing allowance should vaguely follow the rent, so we should gradually get an increasing income which will deal with increased maintenance costs going forward, although our initial outlay would be greater. So is there a longer term cost to the council that we're kicking down the road by making them social rents now? Would it be, are we handcuffing the council to a lower income and higher maintenance costs going forward by making them social rent? Thank you.
Thank you. We have Councillor Wilkinson, Councillor Hastie. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Springett, for the question. No, I don't think so necessarily. So the rental levels are going to be different. So the long-term rental income off the affordable rent would in theory be higher over a 50-year business plan than the social rent. But both rents will increase with a formula each year, which is usually RPI plus 1 or something set by the government. So both rental levels will continue to climb over the lifespan of the buildings. So really what we're saying in the report, that pretty much the higher long-term rental income stream that you'd get with affordable rent is sort of recovered by the fact that you'd get a much higher initial day one grant receipt with social rent. So if you look at the tables, you know, really the grant income that you'd get from Homes England, and we mustn't speak of the numbers here, but you can look at the tables, and the grant amount that we'd get from Homes England for the social rent is almost double, well, in fact more than double what we'd get for affordable rent. So that's what balances the equation, I think. So I understand the question, but I don't concur. I think broadly these scenarios are pretty much over a 50-year business plan, pretty much fairly neutral to the council. So my strong advice would be, given all the risks in the economy generally and so on, would be to take a bigger chunk of upfront cash in the form of grant and go in the social rent direction.
I was just going to say there is also the risk factor to take into account. We would have to borrow more money to deliver at affordable rent as opposed to social rent, and I think with the current climate, the instability, it is better to take the money now rather than borrow it for later.
If I could just quickly come back, I think my concerns lie from the fact that the grant is a one-off. So, assuming these houses are going to be there for 150 years, the balance is over 50 years. After that 50 years, is it not going to cost the borough more in maintenance than we're getting in it? I'm just trying, it's great now and it's a great deal. I'm just wondering if we are kicking the can of liability a bit down the road. That's my only concern. Thank you.
No, I don't believe that's the case. You know, the finance director has set the financial parameters. He assesses the schemes over a 50-year period, and pretty much once you're looking at discounted cash flows 50 years into the future, you know, those receipts are pretty much meaningless. So 50 years is the longest that you should look at an investment of this type, and as we're seeing, you know, probably you'd be looking at sort of major reinvestment in that period of time. And I think there's going to be a lot of changes between now and 50 years as well in terms of rents and so on. So personally, I would, the risks to the council in delivering this 1,000 homes programme are literally here and now. We're in a lending crisis. Borrowing is getting more expensive and more difficult. So, you know, to me, it would seem just wrong really to, as our first action, to leave a lot of grant on the table and return that to Homes England and go down a more highly geared borrowing approach to the programme. That would be my advice.
In 50 years I won't be worrying, I have to say. But I just didn't want to make it a problem for other people. Thank you.
If I just may chip in on that as well, I think we're looking at the figures under current legislation, and over the next 50 years, legislation may well change. So we may or may not leave ourselves wider open by going for the other option if there's a change in legislation. So although we may see a higher profit at the moment at our horizon, it may not materialise if legislation changes.
Thank you. We have 4 councillors, so first Councillor Wilkinson.
Yeah, I support the recommendation for social housing. I'm really pleased about that. Affordable housing, 80% is not affordable. I do hope that the houses will be well built and, you know, eco-friendly and of good quality, because you need to ensure that over the years, you know, maintenance levels and costs will be kept down by having good quality stock, because currently at the moment the housing stock isn't great, and you know that costs more money in the end. At the moment this is a drop in the ocean of what is needed, but it's a good start, and I think it would be a great legacy for Maidstone Borough Council.
Thank you. Councillor Hastie.
Thank you. I'm going to come across as a little disagreeable today. I wanted to say absolutely agree with Councillor Cleater. Everything she said is right. Completely support that, and Councillor Wilkinson. And thank you, Councillor English, for making the point about Granville Road that I was going to make. So I just thought I might have a speak anyway.
Thank you. Next was Councillor Jeffrey.
It's always worrying when we're all in agreement, isn't it?
It is worrying. Can I just say I really like it?
I must say, having spent 5 minutes going through the revised paper, which I can just about read, you know, as you say, the difference is marginal, so I can see absolutely no reason not to go with option B, isn't it, the social rent one. But I do think the points made by Councillor Wilkinson around insulation in particular is very, very important, and the earlier comments on transport are essential. So I would be very happy to second, if you haven't done it already, to second that proposal.
Thank you. Councillor English.
Just an observation, in terms of the long-term trend, whilst it might appear you know, financially advantageous in terms to go for the higher rental figure, one has to calculate that there might be a difference in the reliability of the income and a difference in the amount of non-payment. And so if you actually look at that aspect, it becomes less of an attractive proposition to go for the higher rent quotient. So I think the officers have probably taken that into account.
Thank you. Councillor Parfitt-Reid.
And just to reiterate, there is the issue of our temporary accommodation, which is a cost avoidance, which actually saves the council money in the long term. So that can't be underestimated either. So it's great that it seems that everybody is in agreement.
Thank you. So does anyone else have anything they'd like to add to that? If not, then the proposal by Councillor English, seconded by Councillor Jeffrey. Are we all happy with that? Okay, thank you. And is everyone agreed? Thank you. I declare the meeting closed. Thank you. Thanks, George.